Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 10 greatest conductors ever, part 1. Actually, there are going to be 2 lists of the 10 greatest conductors ever. And, well, there's a good reason for it, and I'm going to explain it to you. I actually was looking around on the internet, as I sometimes do, and I saw that, I don't know who was it, BBC Music or someone had a list of the 20 greatest conductors, and it was just the dumbest list you've ever seen in your life. I mean, Simon Rattle, and oh God. I mean, it was crazy. And so, and then I noticed that conductor and blogger Kenneth Woods, who's very interesting, and I recommend his stuff wholeheartedly because he gives a real professional's viewpoint and he's always fun to read. He did his list of the 20 greatest conductors ever in groups of 5. Which are very easy to find. You can just Google search Kenneth Woods 20 greatest conductors. It's in groups of, it's 4 different blog things with explanations, some of which I agreed with and some of which I didn't. But it seems to me that all of these lists were completely misconceived. Yes, they were. And I have the true answer to how to handle this list because conductors, the great conductors as we think of them, come in 2 clumps. Clump 1 is generalist conductors who had huge discographies and recorded all kinds of things, or should have recorded all kinds of things. And clump 2, the specialists, the ones who had specific areas of the repertoire that they did extremely well. And while, of course, they did other things, could have been good, could have been bad, or they didn't do as much, whatever. But it makes much, much more sense, I think, to put conductors into these 2 groups of the 10 greatest in each group. And that's what I'm going to do with a couple of caveats. Caveat number 1 is I am not getting into the historical conductor thing. These are all conductors who made beautiful stereo recordings. And I think that's important because you want to get a sense of what they really sounded like. That means, and it pains me, no Toscanini, who was unquestionably a great conductor. No Fort Wengler, who is controversially a great conductor. No Erich Kleiber. I mean, some of these people who really did fabulous things, but it didn't quite make it fully into the stereo era to show us the full panoply of their talents. You've got to draw the line somewhere with these things. And I don't want to get into the pissing match between all the historical people and all that. They're just too irritating. And I've done this too many times. Life is too short. So we're going to have the 10 greatest generalist conductors first. That is with extensive discographies of wonderful music of every conceivable type. And we'll see where we wind up. These are in no particular order. Let's get that straight also. I haven't even numbered them because just numbering means like, well, number 1 is number 1 and number 10 is number 10. And you get to all of this, folder all about who is or is not on the list. So I have just put down 10 names and I'm standing by them. The 10 greatest generalist conductors ever are, ta-da, Leonard Bernstein. I mean, come on, right? I mean, not only was he a fabulous composer in conducting his own music, but he did American music. He did Mahler, he did Haydn, he did Sibelius, he did Tchaikovsky, he could do anything, absolutely anything, and he could do it superbly and thrillingly and as often as not wonderfully. I mean, the Liszt Faust Symphony, there were things he did that no one else touched, that he did multiple times. And he was absolutely a musical genius, and there's no question about that. So love him or hate him, he's got to be on the list. Next, a conductor we've been talking about constantly, Charles Mackerras, because it is my duty to resurrect or maintain his reputation as one of the greatest generalist conductors ever. I mean, he gave us Janacek. His Czech music generally was phenomenal. We've been reviewing those boxes of Czech music that he made. He did Handel. He did Mozart. He pioneered the period instrument movement. He was interested in everything musical. As regards Strauss was amazing. His opera recordings were terrific. I mean, there was nothing he couldn't do. He's on my list of people who never made a bad record. I mean, we did a whole separate video of that. So you've got to include Charles Mackerras. After Charles Mackerras, Herbert von Karajan. Well, this one was a little controversial because Karajan, wanted to be a specialist. He wanted to be the great German repertoire conductor, but he wasn't. He was really better at Russian music. He was better in French music. He did all kinds of things well, and he did German music very well too. He did because he had a style. He had a method, and he sort of plugged everything into the Karajan sound, and whatever came out was Karajanized. And so some people called it carrion, if you didn't like it, as in bird of prey, carrion. But yeah, Herbert von Karajan, if you want to call him that, was a wonderful generalist conductor because he could take light things, strange things, things you didn't pay attention to, and just make them sound like the greatest music in the universe. His disc of opera intermezzi and things like that, there are two of them, almost the same. Incredible performances of small things. He had a standard, he had a level of quality, and he had a sound that once he achieved it, that was it. And so you may like it or you may not like it. It worked for some things better than other things, granted, but boy, he did a lot of stuff. He made a lot of recordings, a lot of good ones, a lot of not so good ones, and he was a generalist, much to his dismay, I suspect. After Karajan, Leopold Stokowski. Oh my God, or Stokowski, however you want to say it. I mean, he was very similar to Karajan. He had the sound, but he did more music than any conductor that ever lived. He conducted more premieres. He was a passionate advocate of everything new, almost without discrimination, anything he wanted, because he conducted it all with his own unbelievable panache. He could take a scrappy orchestra of nobodies and make them sound glorious. And like the first rehearsal, he was a genius podium wizard. Everybody agrees about that. And his range of repertoire was unbelievable, incredibly vast, plus his own transcriptions of Bach and all the other stuff that he brought to the table. Stokowski was a marvel, and he made a bazillion records for everybody, and it was just incredible. So, whatever he did, he put his own personal stamp on it, granted, but he did everything. And he did most of it well. And after Stokowski, his successor in Philadelphia, Eugene Ormandy. Eugene Ormandy was the conductor everybody used to love to hate. Kenneth Woods was right about that. He said the first thing you learned as a critic was to trash Eugene Ormandy. What a stupid thing that was. I always thought it was stupid because I had his pictures at an exhibition since I was like 4. It was my mother's favorite piece of music and her favorite recording of her favorite piece of music. And Mom knew what she was talking about because it's amazing. Ormandy was another one of those conductors who had a sound, a personality. He worked with his own orchestra in Philadelphia for 44 years. And turned them into one of the great ensembles in the history of the universe. And they could play anything. And they did it superbly. And now that we're going through the boxes, wait a minute, right over here, I just got the latest. Wait a minute, my feet are falling off down here under my desk. Yes, here it is. Wait a minute. I could do a little show and tell if I can get the angle on this thing. Oh my God, here it is. Yes, the latest Ormandy box, only 94 CDs covering his recordings from 1964 to 1983 in Philadelphia, with one London Symphony recording, the Dvorak New World Symphony. We will be covering this, shortly, hopefully. And wow, baby. I mean, if this is not a generalist, I don't know who is. There are things in there that you're not going to believe that are really fabulous. I'll just give you a taste. The St. John Passion by Bach, first class. Yes. So there's a little tantalizing tidbit that you will be talking about later. So Eugene Ormandy has to be there, as does Charles Munch. Now, Charles Munch, you might think, is a specialist because he was known as a French music guy, which was such a mistake. Oh, my goodness. I mean, remember, he was from Alsace. He was German. He was Germensch. He was a Germensch, or a Furman, whatever you want to call him. He was the concertmaster of the Leipzig Gewandhaus. I mean, he was as fluent in the German repertoire as anybody. He was wonderful in some of the French repertoire, but almost like Karajan, I find, for example, some of his Debussy and Ravel to be kind of so-so. But his Schubert, whoa, baby! And of course, Berlioz was one of his specialties, which really cemented his reputation as a French guy, and Daphnis and Chloe and all that. But his Schubert Ninth, his Brahms was stupendous. A lot of his Beethoven was superb. I mean, he could do anything, and he did. And he did a lot of music that other conductors weren't doing as well, aside from Berlioz. I mean, he did, corners, the highways and byways of the French repertoires, Honegger, his Roussel. He did Martineau. He didn't record everything that he was performing, but he recorded enough of it for us to know that he was a stunning generalist conductor, and just an amazingly spontaneous musician generally. I mean, you never knew what was going to happen when he got up there, but boy, it was exciting. So yes, Charles Munch. And next, well, here's one that everybody sort of acknowledges, but he's always sidelined, unfortunately. Antal Dorati. I mean, Dorati did the complete Haydn Symphony cycle. Yes, it's still the best one out there on the whole. All these years later, it's amazing, with the Philharmonia Hungarica, and he was a wonderful orchestra trainer, and he conducted everything. For Mercury Living Presence, he did those great Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky discs, Tchaikovsky ballets. He was also interested in doing things that people hadn't done before. He did terrific American music. His Copland was marvelous, absolutely first class, but so was his Brahms. His Mercury Beethoven was excellent. Excellent, really, really. Dvorak. I mean, just one thing after the next. The Slavonic dances are glorious. I mean, you could just name your composer, and you can find amazing things by Dorati. I mean, he gave us Unusual Respighi. Really, really a tremendous artist, and an inquisitive mind, and a character who just had the ability to bring it all to life, with usually orchestras that were not the top orchestras in their class. I mean, and later in life, yes, he got to remake things with the Concertgebouw, but what he did in Detroit, and what he did with the Royal Philharmonic, and we did with all these orchestras that were sort of the stepchildren of the great orchestras, he made them sound fabulous. He was remarkable. So Antal Dorati. And after Dorati, Constantin Silvestri. Now, Silvestri, we don't really know exactly what his specialty might have been, because he didn't make enough recordings. But he made enough. There's a box, there's that icon box of Silvestri, and then there's other stuff that's been released by BBC and on some other labels. But, he was great at everything he did. And that box has music from Tchaikovsky to Stravinsky to Hindemith to Ravel and Debussy and Vaughan Williams and Elgar. Everything he touched sprang to life. How it did that, I'm not entirely sure, but it did. And there's enough there. Certainly, there's enough there to know that had he lived longer, and he did it with the Bournemouth Symphony, with other orchestras that weren't always so hot. Had he lived long enough to make a more substantial body of recordings, you could say very safely they would have been remarkable, because just about everything in that box is really, really memorable. And he was also an outstanding concerto accompanist. So, as was Ormandy and some other people. So yes, we have to talk about Silvestri, because he was one of the greats, and it's just a thousand pities that he didn't live to make more recordings. And after Silvestri, Igor Markevitch, yay! Well, he certainly did enough. I mean, again, often with second-rate orchestras sometimes. I mean, we had all those French orchestras, but they sounded so wonderful when he conducted them. They hated him because he drove them crazy. His recordings with the Lambeau Orchestra are amazing, of Rimsky-Korsakov. And he had, like Stokowski, he had an unbelievable range. I mean, he would do anything. He did Berwald. He did strange Mio and Honegger and Cimarosa, and whatever it was, Spanish zarzuelas, and he was a composer, and somebody with incredibly sharp ears and a keen sense of rhythm, and he got these people to play. His Stravinsky, his Rite of Spring, I mean, oh my goodness, it was amazing. But his Tchaikovsky symphonies were also fabulous. They weren't the slobbering, romantic, heavy breathing Tchaikovsky. They were lean and exciting and razor sharp, and clear. I mean, Scheherazade, he did all this stuff was fantastic, just about. He's another conductor who almost never made a bad record. Really, I mean, any orchestra he got his hands on, he could transform because of his feeling for rhythm and precision and color. And Markevitch is one of the great ones. And last but not least, the only person on this list who isn't dead. Because one of the things about being a generalist is you have to live long enough to generalize. I mean, there's got to be enough of a discography. There's got to be enough stuff out there, and it has to be good enough. So thank God he's still with us, Leonard Slatkin, another conductor who is sadly underrated. First, because he was American, and second, because he wasn't like a big Beethoven guy, German standard repertoire things, although he does it quite well when he wants to. But everything else he's done, wow, baby, has been terrific. He's mostly romantic music, contemporary music, 20th century music, that stuff. But there's an awful lot within that, outside the German standard repertoire. There is tons of stuff. His American music is incomparable. His Vaughan Williams cycle is amazing. His Elgar was fabulous. His Russian music is great. Tchaikovsky ballets. His Haydn London symphonies are amazing. He was one of the few conductors who would do interesting middle period Haydn at major symphony concerts. He is also one of the last conductors who knows how to create a concert program, a season of interesting music, well chosen, well selected. He's explored pieces like the various orchestrations of Pictures in an Exhibition. He's done unusual versions of Mahler's 10th. I mean, he has a genuine musical curiosity allied to amazing musicianship and the complete Leroy Anderson orchestral works. Fabulous stuff. Absolutely fabulous stuff. And a guy who almost always gives you really good musical, enjoyable results. He's also has he ever made a bad record? I don't think so. There's some things I didn't like. I didn't like some of the Lyon French stuff he did for Naxos. Okay, fine. He's incomparable in Rachmaninoff. There's just a huge amount of material that he has managed to process through his natural musicality and give us wonderful, wonderful performances. Also, an extraordinary advocate of contemporary music and good contemporary music. He knows how to pick them. Remember, he was one of the first guys to give us David Del Tredici back in the day, and other people like that. It really, really a quiet, somewhat humble, I guess. I mean, I don't know him that well, but somewhat humble, unassuming musician who lets his personality emerge through the music making. And there aren't that many conductors like that around anymore. And he may turn out to be the last of the great generalists. I don't know. We do need that big Slatkin box, which apparently was only released from RCA, was only released as a download. I know they can't be bothered to spend money actually making something that has physical form, but it's a shame that they don't. So there you have it. The 10 greatest conductors ever who were generalists in stereo. And we'll continue with the next list, the specialists. That will be interesting, I think. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me, and take care.